On the coldest night of the year, two children fled a burning home, alone, terrified, begging God for a miracle. And just as their strength failed, a retired Marine appeared out of the blizzard, guided by a pull he couldn't explain, and a German shepherd who sensed something no human could. But the fire wasn't an accident.
We need to get you out of the cold.
A stranger watched from the shadows. A letter hidden in the ashes warned of a promise long forgotten. And inside the church, a little girl swore she saw a woman no one else could see. A woman who whispered, "Help is coming." This is the story of how fate, faith, and a soldier's wounded heart collided on one frozen night. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge. May God bless you as we start this journey. The snow had a way of swallowing sound in this part of town. By the time it reached the old cobblestone streets around St. Gabriel's Church, footsteps vanished into white. Tires whispered instead of growled, and even the humming highway turned into a soft, distant ache. It was the kind of night where the world felt paused, held in God's half-breath. Rowan Maddox walked through it like a man moving inside a memory he could not wake from. At 38, he carried the frame of someone shaped by years of infantry work. Broad-shouldered, strong without vanity, movement careful and economical. His worn Marpat USMC uniform sat beneath a soft coyote brown armor vest, both so old they seemed to belong to a past life. His coyote tan boots sank deeper with every step. Tactical gloves flexed unconsciously at his sides. His short, dark brown hair was cropped high and tight, the way Marines never truly let go. Silver streaks frosting his temples like permanent winter. His skin kept the sun-baked tan of foreign deserts, while his storm-gray blue eyes carried weather no one here had seen. On his wrist, a scratched military watch ticked with a cracked face, stubborn as a heartbeat that had outlived too many things. Beside him walked Ridge, his German shepherd, 4 years old, compact and powerful like a living spring. Ridge's coat was sable black and gray, the colors blending like smoke over steel. Across his chest ran a striking patch of bright fur shaped like a broken arrow, off-center and unmistakable. His black K9 harness bore the patch K9. Ridge, its edges frayed from years of service. His ears stayed high and alert, amber eyes restless and perceptive. Tonight, Ridge was uneasy. Twice he stopped dead on the walk, muscles tightening under the harness. The first time, Rowan tugged gently. "Easy, boy," he said, his voice low and tired. "It's just snow." But Ridge kept staring into the distance, his breath visible in quick, sharp clouds. The second time, he lifted his nose toward the sky and released a sound Rowan had never heard, something between a warning and a plea. A vibration rolled through the dog's body that made Rowan stop breathing for a moment. He'd felt that sensation before, not here, not in peace, but on the battlefield, seconds before something went terribly wrong. He tried to dismiss it. He told himself he was going to St. Gabriel's only because the silence in his rented room pushed the edges of his thoughts too close together. The church, with its shadowed candles and quiet corners, felt safer than the stark ceiling light of his 4 beige walls. He did not admit he wanted to pray. Marines didn't pray. They bargained. They whispered promises they rarely kept. But when Ridge stopped a third time, pulling hard enough that the leash cut into Rowan's glove, he didn't argue. The dog surged forward, powerful legs sending snow behind him in sprays. That was when Rowan smelled it. Faint, wrong, burning that. Did not belong in winter. Wood, cloth, plastic, home. Every instinct in his body snapped awake. Ridge lunged ahead, dragging Rowan around the final corner until the church steps came into view. Massive stone stairs buried under white, wooden doors shut tight, iron cross dusted with snow. Then, Rowan saw them. Two small bodies collapsed on the landing. His boots slipped in the snow as he sprinted forward. One knee hit the ground so hard he felt it through layers of fabric, but he barely noticed. Ridge circled the children, whining deeply, tail low, body rigid with tension. The boy was closest, 10 years old, thin, wearing a navy parka far too big for him. His dark brown hair stuck to his forehead, wet and wild. His eyelashes were frosted white, his cheeks scraped, soot smudging the line of his jaw. A frayed gray scarf lay crooked across his chest. His sneakers were soaked. Snow had melted and refrozen into the fabric. When his eyes cracked open, they were a striking, exhausted green. "Hey," Rowan said, voice dropping into the steady tone that had once calmed bleeding soldiers. "Look at me, kid." The boy tried. Is this the church?" he whispered. "Yeah," Rowan answered softly. "You made it." The boy shut his eyes briefly, as if the answer relieved and hurt him at the same time. "My sister," he breathed. "Ellie?" Rowan looked to the second small figure curled on the upper step. Ellie, 7 maybe. A tiny girl wearing a cream-colored coat now stiff with ice. Her golden brown curls were plastered to her cheeks, her lips pale but not blue. One arm was wrapped around a half-burned stuffed bear missing an ear and stitched back together with clumsy thread. Ridge lowered himself beside her. Careful and deliberate, he pressed his warm body against her back, chest breathing steadily to shield her from the cold. His amber eyes lifted to Rowan, sharp, urgent, almost pleading. "She needs warmth. Now." Rowan swallowed the tightness in his throat. "What's your name, kid?" "Jonah," the boy whispered. "Jonah Carter. Ellie's my sister." "Jonah, listen to me," Rowan said. "She's breathing. You both are. I've got you." Jonah trembled. "Our house? It was on fire. Mom, Dad said..." His breath cracked. "He said to run to church because God can see us better here." His voice shrank to a thread. "I told Ellie God would send someone. But then she fell. I thought he didn't hear us." Rowan opened his mouth to answer. And that was when it happened. The church bell rang. Once. Deep. Unmistakably real. The kind of sound that vibrated through bone. Rowan's heart jerked. The bell never rang this late. He whipped around. The doors were still shut. No lights behind them. No shadows moving. Ridge abruptly stood, ears rigid, staring up toward the steeple as if he saw something perched there, something Rowan could not see. Jonah gasped softly. Did God ring it?" Rowan couldn't answer. His breath fogged the air, mind racing. The timing was too perfect to ignore, too impossible to explain. Ridge let out a low, rumbling growl, not of fear, but recognition. Rowan forced himself back into motion. "Jonah," he said, kneeling again, "you did the right thing bringing her here. That took courage." Jonah blinked hard. Are you a soldier?" "Used to be." The boy's gaze moved over Rowan's faded uniform, his boots, his cracked watch. Then it moved to Ridge, whose breath warmed Ellie's cheek. "My dad said sometimes angels don't look like angels," Jonah murmured. "Sometimes they look like tired people, or stray dogs." Rowan's chest tightened painfully. Angel? He wasn't that. He didn't deserve the word. He lifted Jonah, feeling how light he was. "Let's get you inside. Ridge will stay with Ellie until I come back." "Don't let her be alone," Jonah whispered. "She isn't," Rowan said. "You got her here. That's more than most could do." He stood and pounded his fist against the church door. "Father Michael, open up. We need help." Footsteps answered from within. Then the scrape of old locks turning. Light spilled out. warm and gold, washing over Rowan, Jonah, and the swirling snow. Rowan turned once more. Ridge lay curved protectively around Ellie, snow melting against his fur, his amber eyes reflecting the doorway's glow like he already knew. This is where their story begins. And for the first time in years, Rowan felt the fragile stir of something he thought the war had burned out of him. Hope. Warm light spilled from the doorway of St. Gabriel's, flooding into the snow-heavy night as though the church itself exhaled. Rowan Maddox stepped inside with Jonah Carter held firmly in his arms, feeling the blast of heated air across his frozen face. His breath hitched from the sudden temperature shift. Ridge remained outside for a beat longer, curled tightly around little Ellie Carter, shielding her with his body until Rowan returned. Inside, St. Gabriel's looked different than it did during Rowan's occasional reluctant visits. The nave was dim, except for a few flickering sconces along the walls and a table lamp near the side hallway. Wooden pews stretched in long, silent rows. Candles half-burned stood beneath stained glass windows that hid their colors in the darkness. The air smelled faintly of incense, pine cleaner, and old books. Father Michael O'Rourke hurried toward them. He was a man in his mid-50s with thinning gray hair combed neatly back, a square jaw softened by age, and tired blue eyes set into a long face. His shoulders were slightly hunched in the black cassock he wore, the garment brushing along the floor as he moved. A silver crucifix hung from a chain around his neck. Though calm by nature, worry had carved sharp lines along his brow. "Oh, dear God," Father Michael breathed when he saw the boy. "Bring him this way, Rowan." His voice had a warm, Irish-tinged cadence that could make a confession feel lighter. "You know my name," Rowan said quietly, the words half disbelief. Father Michael didn't answer. Instead, he motioned toward a small room off the aisle, the parish hospitality room, with old couches, a long wooden table, and quilts folded neatly on a shelf. Rowan lowered Jonah onto a couch, stripping off the boy's wet scarf and brushing snow from his coat. Jonah tried to sit up, but Rowan laid a steadying hand on his shoulder. "Easy," Rowan murmured. "Stay warm. I'm going back for Ellie." At her name, Jonah's pale face tightened with fear. "Don't leave her." "I won't," Rowan said, already moving. Father Michael held the door open as Rowan stepped back into the cold. Ridge looked up immediately, tail thumping once despite the tense situation. Ellie's small form was still pressed against him, her breath shallow but present. Rowan scooped her up carefully. She was lighter than she looked, far too light for a child her age. Her little hands were stiff with cold, and her curls were frozen into soft, icy coils. Her stuffed bear dangled limply, its half-burnt fur catching the orange glow from the church doorway. Ridge followed close, snow sticking to his sable fur, his bright, broken arrow chest patch catching the light as he moved. When Rowan carried Ellie inside, Jonah let out a shaky exhale of relief. Ridge trotted in behind them, immediately planting himself next to the couch like a guardian posted at his station. Father Michael disappeared briefly and returned with blankets, warm compresses, and a steaming mug of peppermint tea. "There's an EMT on call," he said, wrapping Ellie carefully. "Storm slowed everything, but help is on the way." Rowan placed a hand on Ellie's forehead. Still cold, but no longer icy. "She should be in a hospital." "She will be soon," the priest replied. "But you stopped the freeze from taking hold. Both of you." Jonah looked at Rowan, then at Ridge. "We didn't think we'd make it." Father Michael crouched in front of Jonah, his eyes gentle. "Would you like to tell me what happened?" Jonah swallowed. "The fire. It was everywhere. We couldn't reach Mom. Dad yelled for us to run. He said if something bad happened, go to church because..." He hesitated, breath trembling. Because God looks here first. Father Michael's expression flickered. Something like pain, something like recognition. Before Rowan could question it, he felt Ridge move beside him. The dog had risen suddenly, ears stiff, body angled toward the doorway that led into the dark nave. His amber eyes fixed on something unseen, his tail lowered, muscles tightening. Rowan straightened. Ridge never reacted without reason. "Easy," Rowan whispered. But Ridge didn't relax. The church door, still shut, creaked softly as though a breeze pushed against it from outside. Except the air was still. Snow did not fall inside, and the latch had fully locked when Father Michael closed it moments ago. Jonah's eyes widened. Ellie stirred faintly under the blankets. Ridge took a step forward, frozen in a point like a hunting dog zeroing in on a target no one else could see. Rowan's pulse lurched. He didn't believe in signs, not since the war, not since the things he had failed to prevent. Yet the atmosphere shifted, the same way it had at the church steps when the bell rang without a hand pulling the rope. Father Michael stood slowly, his face carefully blank. "This church is old," he said quietly. "Old wood makes old sounds." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Ridge finally eased, though he continued staring toward the nave long after the sound faded. Father Michael cleared his throat. "Let me prepare the infirmary room. Jonah, Ellie needs warmth. Rowan, if you could help." "Yeah," Rowan murmured, still watching Ridge. "I've got it." For the next 20 minutes, Rowan worked with mechanical precision, something that made him look both present and distant at the same time. He moved with the calm authority of a man who had hauled wounded soldiers across deserts. He rubbed Jonah's hands with warm cloths, held Ellie against his chest to transfer heat, and ensured that Ridge lay close enough to share warmth, but not enough to trap blankets. Jonah watched Rowan the entire time. A child staring at a stranger with too many questions building behind his eyes. "You don't even know us," Jonah whispered at one point. "But you came." Rowan looked down at him. "Ridge found you. I just followed him." Jonah managed a ghost of a smile. "My dad said God talks to kids and dogs first." Rowan inhaled sharply. Something about the sentence felt like it had weight, like a puzzle piece from a box he didn't know he had lost. Before he could respond, the side door burst open with a blast of frigid wind and a man stumbled in. A volunteer night guard from the church grounds. He was in his 40s, short and compact, with a thick brown mustache and a heavy brown winter jacket dusted with snow. His name tag read, Howard Briggs. He had kind eyes but a perpetually startled expression, as though the world often surprised him. "Father Michael," Howard gasped. "The fire department just radioed. They found something behind the Carter house, something odd." Jonah and Ellie both stiffened. Rowan glanced sharply at Father Michael. "What kind of something?" Howard hesitated, catching sight of the children. Maybe not in front of—" "It's okay," Jonah said, though his voice shook. "We heard worse already." Howard sighed. They found footprints behind the house, adult footprints, leading into the woods, and a gas can, half melted. Jonah's breath hitched. Ellie whimpered. Ridge lifted his head again. Rowan's jaw tightened. Not an accident. Father Michael closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing himself for a truth he already suspected. Howard added, "They said the footprints didn't match the father's boots." Rowan stood straighter, a cold focus settling over him, the same one he used when identifying danger on patrol. "Which direction?" "Northwest," Howard said. "Toward the ridge." Rowan felt Ridge step closer until their shoulders brushed. The dog's fur stood on end, not fear, but recognition. A path, a trail, a threat. Jonah grabbed Rowan's sleeve. Was someone there? In our house? Rowan knelt again. Jonah, I won't lie to you. Someone might have been. But you're safe now. You and Ellie both. Ellie mumbled something, half-conscious. Rowan leaned closer as she whispered, Mom kept calling us. She said, run. Run to the light. Rowan swallowed hard. He had carried enough dying soldiers to know when a person's last words hung in the air around a survivor. Father Michael placed a hand on Rowan's shoulder. We should let them rest. Trauma first, answers after. Rowan nodded, though his eyes remained on the door where Ridge still stared, alert and unwavering. An hour passed. The children slept on the couches, covered in quilts. Howard left to meet emergency responders. Father Michael brewed tea, moving quietly. The storm raged harder outside, wind howling against the stained glass. Rowan stood alone near the vestibule, watching snow seep under the door frame. Ridge pressed against his leg, warm and grounding. Something's off. Rowan murmured to the dog. That smell. That door. That bell. Ridge flicked an ear. Behind them, a soft voice said, You came exactly when they needed you. Rowan turned. Father Michael stood with his hands folded, his expression unreadable. You heard the boy? Rowan replied. He said God would send someone. Father Michael's gaze held Rowan's a moment too long. And he did. The words lingered like incense. Rowan looked away, unsettled. A few minutes later, headlights cut through the stained glass. The EMT van arriving at last. 2 paramedics entered, stamping off snow. They were young, one a tall, freckled woman with auburn hair tied in a bun, the other a broad-shouldered black man with a short beard and calm, steady eyes. They introduced themselves as Mara Lewis and David Thompson. Mara had the brisk confidence of someone used to chaos. David radiated a quiet kindness that made frightened people breathe easier. They examined Jonah and Ellie with practiced hands. They're lucky, Mara said. 10 more minutes, hypothermia would have taken hold. David gently placed a warm gel pack on Ellie's cheek. Whoever carried her here saved her life. Rowan said nothing. As the EMTs prepared the children for transport, Mara paused by Rowan. We'll take them to Silver Hollow Medical. You should come by tomorrow. Rowan gave a faint nod. I will. Ridge nudged his hand. Outside, the wind howled like something trying to get in. Father Michael closed the doors and leaned against them, his breath unsteady. Rowan felt the truth pressing in on all sides. 2 children fleeing a burning house. Footprints that didn't belong. A church bell that rang without touch. And a priest who seemed to know more than he said. Ridge stood at the ready, amber eyes reflecting Rowan's own gnawing suspicion. Whatever had begun tonight, it was far from over. Rowan Maddox stood outside the emergency double doors of Silver Hollow Medical, feeling the burn of the cold wind biting into his skin. The storm had not let up since the night before. Snow drifted in thick sheets across the parking lot, piling against streetlamps and the curved edge of the ambulance bay. Ridge stood pressed against Rowan's leg, his sable coat peppered with flakes. His amber eyes scanned everything, the parking lot, the doorway, the flicker of movement inside, as if every shadow carried a warning. Inside, the hospital buzzed with quiet chaos. Nurses in blue scrubs moved briskly between stations. An older security guard with a gray mustache and a limp. Name badge reading Walter Higgins, a man shaped by too many night shifts. Nodded at Rowan as he passed through. Walter had the calm, watchful demeanor of someone who carried old pains in the knee and older stories in his eyes. Jonah and Ellie Carter had been admitted hours earlier, and now that Rowan had delivered them into capable hands, he felt the weight of the last night settle heavily across his shoulders. He walked toward the pediatric observation wing where the children were staying. Ridge's paws made soft taps on the tile floor, his ears rotating at every sound. Mara Lewis, the EMT with auburn hair pulled into a tight bun, met Rowan at the hallway entrance. Her tall, lean frame was wrapped in a fleece-lined jacket now, cheeks still pink from the cold. She gave Rowan a tight, exhausted smile. "They're stable," she reported. "We warmed them up, checked vitals. No respiratory damage. Both dehydrated, both exhausted, but alive." Rowan exhaled slowly. "Good." Mara hesitated. "The police interviewed them briefly, about the fire." Rowan stiffened. "Already?" "It's protocol," she said gently. 2 minors, suspicious blaze, no parents accounted for. Detective Halvor asked only what Jonah could handle. "Detective Halvor?" Rowan repeated. "Yes. Tall guy, mid-40s, blonde crew cut, thick beard. Looks like he was carved out of frozen lumber. Talks like it too." Rowan nodded. He'd seen men like that. Rigid, efficient, emotionally distant. Soldiers without uniforms. Mara led him toward the small room where Jonah was sitting upright in bed. Ellie slept beside him in another bed, cuddled into warm blankets with her half-burned teddy bear pressed against her cheek. Jonah looked better. Color returned to his cheeks, damp hair combed back. But his eyes carried the same hollow tremor of a child who had seen too much. He clutched a paper cup of warm broth, hands trembling. When Jonah saw Rowan, those green eyes brightened with desperate relief. "You came," he whispered. Rowan sat beside him. "I told you I would." Ridge settled at Rowan's feet, placing his chin over Jonah's shoe in a gesture of quiet loyalty. Jonah looked at the dog with a faint smile. "Ridge, he saved us." Rowan wasn't sure how to respond to that. Ridge lifted his head a little higher, as if knowing the importance of the moment. "Jonah," Rowan said softly, "you told the EMT something about last night. Something about the house." Jonah's fingers tightened around the cup. "The police asked questions. But I couldn't, You're safe now," Rowan assured him. "Whatever you say stays between us unless you want otherwise." Jonah swallowed hard. His lower lip quivered. "I heard the back door open." Rowan felt the room shift. "When?" "Before the fire," Jonah whispered. "Maybe 10 minutes before." "What did you hear?" Jonah stared at his sheets. "Someone walked inside. Heavy boots. Not my dad's." He shut his eyes tightly. And then Dad yelled something. "What did he yell?" Jonah's voice cracked. He said, "Don't do that. There are kids." And then something hit the wall. I heard Mom scream, just once. Then everything smelled like gasoline. Dad grabbed us and pushed us to the hallway. He told us to run to church and not look back. Rowan felt something icy roll through him, colder than the blizzard outside. "Jonah," he said carefully, "is there anything else?" Jonah nodded, tears forming. "I think the man in the house was still there after we left. I heard him breathing, like he was close." Ridge lifted his head sharply at Jonah's last sentence. He gave a low, vibrating growl, not aggressive, but recognizing danger. Memory. Scent. Something familiar. Suddenly, Ridge stepped back from Jonah and stared at the window. His stare was fixed, rigid, as though something invisible passed by the glass. His amber eyes narrowed, ears pinned forward, body stiff. Rowan followed Ridge's line of sight, but saw nothing outside except snow swirling under a street lamp. Jonah whispered. He smells things we can't, doesn't he? Rowan didn't answer, because Ridge began to growl again, deeper this time, directed not at the window, but at something else, at Rowan's jacket. More specifically, at the faint smell of smoke still clinging to it. As if the scent didn't belong to Rowan at all, but to the man Jonah had heard in the house. A chill ran through Rowan's spine. Ridge had never reacted to his scent before, not once. Detective Halvor arrived shortly after. The man was exactly as Mara described, tall with a hulking frame, a blonde crew cut, and a thick ice-blonde beard that framed a craggy jaw. His blue eyes were sharp and emotionless, set under thick brows. He wore a heavy dark gray winter coat, badge clipped to the chest, and boots that looked military, even though they weren't regulation. Marine? Halvor asked, studying Rowan. Retired? Rowan said. The detective's tone was noncommittal. Kids say you found them. Ridge did, Rowan corrected. Halvor's eyes slid toward the German shepherd. Good dog. Rowan didn't, like the tone. Too appraising, not admiring. Like Halvor was measuring Ridge as a tool, not a life. Halvor continued. Autopsy on the parents came back fast because of the circumstances. He lowered his voice slightly. Preliminary assessment says they died before the fire started. Rowan felt his stomach tighten. How long before? An hour, Halvor replied. Maybe 2? Jonah inhaled sharply. Ellie stirred in her sleep. Ridge pressed close to Rowan, sensing the shift in the room. Halvor added, So whoever started that fire did it after the parents were already dead. Which means your timeline. He looked at Jonah. About hearing a man in the house is important. Jonah clutched the blanket tightly. He was there. A long silence settled over the room. Finally, Halvor said, We're heading to the house soon. If your dog is trained, he can help. He's retired, Rowan answered. Still trained, Halvor said simply. Rowan didn't argue. They arrived at the Carter property as the storm eased into a gentler snowfall. Whatever remained of the house stood like a charred skeleton, broken beams jutting upward, windows blown out, blackened wood still steaming in the cold. Firefighters moved through the rubble, flashlights cutting through the smoky air. Ridge jumped out of the truck and immediately sniffed the air, ears sharp, tail stiff, body tense with purpose. Halvor walked beside Rowan, boots crunching through frozen ash. Fire started near the kitchen, accelerant used, no question. Ridge led them past the back porch. The snow here was patchy, melted by the blaze, then refrozen. Scorch marks stained the ground. But Ridge wasn't interested in those. He pulled left, toward the back fence. Then he began digging. Hard. Fast. What is he doing? Halvor asked. Rowan didn't answer. Ridge continued clawing at the snow, flinging cold earth and wet ash behind him until something small and metallic clinked against a buried stone. Rowan crouched beside him. Easy, boy. Let me see. In the shallow hole lay a broken rosary. Silver chain. A small crucifix snapped in half. The beads were intact, smooth, clean. Too clean. No smoke damage, no soot. No burn marks, as if someone had carried it outside before the fire started, as if someone had dropped it while fleeing. Rowan felt a cold ripple crawl across his skin. This belonged to their mother. Halvor frowned. How do you know? Rowan held up the rosary. Because I saw it around her neck in one of the family pictures in their living room yesterday. And yet, Halvor said quietly, it's not burned. Jonah's voice echoed in Rowan's memory. I heard the back door open. Dad yelled, don't do that. There are kids. Rowan closed his fist around the broken rosary. This was no accident. This was no random break-in. This was deliberate, calculated, malicious. Ridge let out a low growl. Staring at the tree line behind the house, hackles raised, tail still, amber eyes sharp with recognition. Something, or someone, had been here. And whatever it was not done. Rowan stood slowly, snow swirling around him, the broken rosary cold in his palm. The chapter closed on that image. A Marine, a K-9, and a clue no one could explain, glinting like a warning in the winter light. Snow still clung to Rowan Maddox's boots when he pushed open the heavy wooden doors of St. Gabriel's Church. The morning light struggled through the stained glass panels, spreading muted colors across the stone floor. The warmth inside felt strangely muted. Not silence, but an expectant stillness, as though the walls themselves were listening. Ridge walked beside him, tail low, ears lifted high and alert. The German shepherd's sable black and gray coat gleamed faintly, the broken arrow patch of fur on his chest catching the thin light like a symbol Rowan kept trying not to interpret. Father Michael O'Rourke was waiting near the altar. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, posture straight despite the weariness lining his long face. His gray hair seemed whiter today, his blue eyes shadowed by fatigue or fear. The black cassock he wore hung neatly, but Rowan noticed his fingers tightening around the silver crucifix at his chest. "You came early?" Father Michael said quietly, his voice steady but lacking its usual warm undertone. "I didn't sleep," Rowan replied. Neither did Ridge. Ridge sniffed the air, then padded ahead, circling once near the pews before returning to Rowan's side. His body moved with a quiet confidence, but his posture was tense. Every few seconds, he flicked an uneasy glance toward the far hallway that led to the sacristy. Father Michael followed the dog's movements. Canines always sense what we don't, years of training, and instinct too. Rowan studied the priest carefully. "I want to talk about what Ellie saw last night." Father Michael's jaw tightened. Children see many things in moments of fear. Rowan stepped closer, boots echoing on the stone. "She saw a woman, a young woman, standing near the crucifix, whispering to her." The priest shook his head quickly, too quickly. "Hallucinations, Rowan. Trauma does that." "Is that what you think happened?" "I know that's what happened," Father Michael said, but the firmness in his tone felt rehearsed. "I was here the entire time. I saw no one." Rowan watched the priest's eyes, the way they didn't match his voice. "Then why does Ellie keep insisting the woman told her to run? Why say she felt her hand on her shoulder?" The priest opened his mouth, then closed it again. Ridge lifted his head sharply. The dog's ears shot up, and he sniffed the air toward the side hallway, the same direction he had reacted to the night before. A low rumble formed in his throat, not aggressive, but searching. Father Michael's eyes darted to Ridge. His face blanched, Rowan noticed. "You reacted just now," he said softly. "Why?" Father Michael drew a slow breath. "Because if Ellie truly saw someone," his voice faltered, "then everything changes." Rowan's pulse tightened. "Changes how?" The priest did not answer immediately. A sound echoed through the hallway. Soft, deliberate, not wood creaking, not the wind. It was the faint, unmistakable sound of footsteps. Barely there. Like someone stepping carefully across old stone, trying not to be heard. Ridge snapped toward the sound, body rigid, tail straight, every hair along his spine standing upright like needles. Rowan froze. Father Michael whispered, "No one else is here. I locked the doors myself." The footsteps stopped. Silence fell heavy, and Rowan felt, for the first time since the war, that something unseen stood close enough to touch. Some presence, some memory, something that Ridge recognized. But Rowan could not. Ridge's eyes flicked upward toward the stained glass window of the Virgin Mary. He whimpered softly, head tilting, like he was seeing something Rowan wasn't. Then the sound faded entirely. The air turned cold. Father Michael crossed himself, not casually, fearfully. Father Michael exhaled shakily. Rowan, perhaps we should sit. Rowan did not move. Ridge positioned himself between Rowan and the hallway, muscles tight. Tell me what you know, Rowan said. No more pieces. No more excuses. The priest walked slowly toward one of the front pews and sat down, the cassock settling around him like a shadow. He rubbed the crucifix in his palms as if gathering courage. You mentioned the Carter family, the priest finally said. There's something you should understand. Rowan remained standing, posture straight. Go on. The Carters, they weren't regular parishioners, but they came here in moments of hardship. Jonah had trouble sleeping, night terrors. Ellie, she always clung to her mother's necklace. A rosary. The same one you showed the detective. Rowan's eyes narrowed. You recognized it. How could I not? Father Michael whispered. It belonged to Lily Carter, a gentle woman. Brown hair, soft voice. She said prayers with her children every night. She wore that rosary every day. It was her anchor. Rowan clenched his jaw. So, how did it end up behind the house? Untouched by flames? The priest's hands trembled slightly. That is what frightens me, because Lily once told me something, months ago, something I dismissed. What was it? She said someone had been watching their house. Rowan tensed. Who? She didn't know. She described a shadow at first, then a figure, a man, standing near the tree line behind their home. Always at dusk, always still. She only saw him twice, but her husband saw him once too. Why didn't they report it? They didn't want to seem paranoid, and they feared it would upset the children. Ridge whined softly, low, drawn out, uncertain. Rowan knelt beside him, resting a hand on the dog's back. What is it, boy? Ridge sniffed the ground, then lifted his head and stared again toward the hallway. He recognized something, a smell, a memory, a presence. Father Michael swallowed. Rowan, there's more. Rowan straightened. Say it. The priest looked defeated, like a man who had carried a truth too heavy for too long. Last night, when you brought the children in, Ellie kept repeating that she saw a woman. You said she described her as warm, calm, young. Yes. If that is true, the priest said quietly, then Ellie saw someone she could not have seen. Someone who has been dead for years. Rowan stiffened. Who? Father Michael hesitated, then whispered. Lily Carter's sister, Anna. Rowan frowned. The children's aunt? Yes. And she died a long time ago. How? The priest looked down at his hands. Car accident. Out on Ridge Road. Lily never recovered from the loss. The family didn't speak of it often. Rowan exhaled. So Ellie hallucinated someone she never met. Father Michael shook his head slowly. Ellie met her. 10 times, maybe more. Rowan stared. How? You just said, she met her, Father Michael said quietly, in this church. The room seemed to tilt, and Ridge let out another whine, louder this time. Rowan took a step forward. Father, explain. Father Michael raised his eyes, and Rowan finally saw it. The fear, the guilt, and the impossible truth he'd been trying not to reveal. Ellie described the woman exactly as she was when she used to come here. Her hair, her smile, the blue scarf she always wore in winter. The priest's voice shook. Rowan. Ellie described her perfectly, down to the small mole on her cheek, a detail she could not possibly know. Rowan felt the air leave his lungs. You're telling me she saw a ghost? Father Michael's jaw tightened. I'm telling you she saw someone no one alive has seen in years. Ridge moved forward, positioning himself between Rowan and the priest, tail stiff, head raised. Rowan stared at Father Michael. And the part that scares you the most? Father Michael whispered. It's not that Ellie saw her. His eyes lifted, meeting Rowan's storm-gray blue gaze. It's that Ellie saw her, the same night you arrived. Rowan felt his pulse slam against his ribs. What does that have to do with me? The priest took a breath that looked like it hurt. Because, he said, Anna, Lily's sister, knew you. Rowan's heart stopped. What? She knew you, Father Michael repeated. Before she died, and based on what Lily told me, you meant something to her. Rowan felt the world tilt. Ridge pressed against him, sensing the shock. Father Michael's final words fell into the quiet church like a weight too heavy to lift. And if Ellie saw her that night, then this tragedy is tied to you in ways neither of us can yet understand. The storm had not relented. Snow whipped sideways across the Carter property as Rowan Maddox stepped out of the truck with Ridge at his heel, the German shepherd's black and gray sable coat rippling beneath the wind. The ruined house looked smaller in daylight, its charred beams jutting out like broken ribs. Smoke still lingered faintly in the air, mixing with the metallic scent of burnt wiring and damp ash. Ridge sniffed the ground immediately, head low, tail stiff, scanning every inch as if the house still held echoes of last night's terror. A patrol cruiser sat nearby, its red and blue lights flickering faintly through the snow. Sheriff Elena Brooke, tall, broad-shouldered, mid-40s, with dark blonde hair tied into a tight ponytail, stood near the back porch, bending over a patch of disturbed snow. Elena was a woman built like someone who had lifted hay bales long before she carried a badge. Square jaw, stern eyes, weathered skin that had seen too much winter and too many broken cases. Her brown sheriff's coat was dusted with snow, her gloved hands tracing lines on the ground. She looked up sharply when Rowan approached. Maddox, she called, her breath forming white plumes. Your timing's good. You need to see this. Rowan joined her, Ridge pressing close. The sheriff pointed at a faint impression in the snow, nearly invisible but not fully erased. Footprints, Rowan murmured. Adult male, Sheriff Brooks said. Deep, heavy tread. Same pattern the fire department reported last night. But someone tried to cover these with ash. Rowan crouched down, fingers brushing the frozen powder. There was ash mixed into the snow, gray flakes deliberately scattered in a sweeping motion, trying to mask size, shape, direction. Exactly. Elena exhaled. Whoever did this wanted us blind. And he was careful, knew enough to use cold ash instead of warm soot. Rowan stared at the prints. The angle, the stride, the intent. Not random. He knew the house. Rowan muttered. Sheriff Brooke crossed her arms. Jonah said he saw a man inside right before the fire blew out the kitchen wall. Rowan looked up sharply. He said that to you? Yes. Kid's shaken, but he's not lying. Elena stepped closer. He said the man stood near the hallway, didn't move, just watched them. Silent? Rowan asked. Jonah's voice echoed in his memory. I heard him breathing, like he was close. Yes, the sheriff replied, silent until the father tried to stop him. Rowan swallowed hard, Jonah also heard his father yell, "Don't do that. There are kids." It wasn't a burglary. Sheriff Brooke nodded grimly. No, this was murder, and the arson was cleanup. Ridge growled, a quiet, low thunder in his chest. He pulled toward the doorway, fur bristling, muscles bunching like he was bracing for an attack. Sheriff Brooke stiffened. Why's he reacting like that? Rowan didn't answer immediately. He had seen Ridge react this way only in combat zones, when they came too close to an active threat, an IED, or a hidden insurgent. Ridge's body locked into a precise stance. Front paws wide, shoulders lowered, ears pinned forward, eyes tracking an unseen enemy. "He thinks someone was here," Rowan said. "Recently?" Elena looked at Ridge with new respect and unease. "You're telling me your dog feels a presence?" "Not presence," Rowan corrected. "Intent." Ridge barked once, sharp and explosive, lunging toward the back doorway so violently that Rowan had to grip his harness. Ridge's chest patch, the off-center bright arrow, was heaving rapidly. His breath steamed in rhythmic bursts. "That's his battle warning," Rowan murmured. "Exactly the one he used right before ambushes." The sheriff cursed under her breath, meaning someone could have been here this morning, maybe watching us. Rowan scanned the tree line, snowy pines bending in the wind. Or came back to check if the evidence burned the way he wanted. Elena kicked the snow lightly. Then he missed this. She held up a small object in a plastic evidence pouch. Tape adhesive, found near the kitchen door, could be from gloves. Rowan's eyes tightened. "Black gloves?" Elena frowned. "How did you—" Before she finished, Ridge stiffened again. He moved to Rowan's other side as though guarding him, staring beyond the fence line with absolute stillness. "Something wrong?" the sheriff asked. Rowan's hand instinctively fell to his belt, fingers brushing nothing, a habit from years of carrying a sidearm he no longer wore. "Ridge sees something." Elena followed his stare. At first, there was only white haze, wind, trees swaying, the skeletal remains of the Carter home. Nothing. Then Ridge growled again, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through Rowan's boots. A faint crunch of snow sounded behind them, small, subtle, far away, but unmistakably deliberate. Ridge spun instantly, teeth bared, body launching forward a few feet before stopping. Rowan turned fast, but saw nothing. No figure, no tracks, only the swirling storm. Sheriff Brooke raised her flashlight, scanning the blowing white. "What did he hear?" Rowan's pulse hammered. "Not here. Smell." Ridge backed up slowly, tail stiff, keeping his eyes locked on a single point in the storm. A point Rowan could not see, could not name. The dog trembled, not in fear, but recognition, like he remembered the scent from the night the Carter home burned. "Someone's close," Rowan said, and the storm swallowed his words. The rest of the afternoon blurred between questions, photographs, and reciting small details into the sheriff's recorder. Rowan stayed near Ridge, watching every movement the dog made. The K-9 never relaxed, not even when the snow began to lighten. By dusk, the sheriff dismissed them. "Go," she said. "Rest, but keep your phone on. We're not done. This is only warming up." Rowan and Ridge walked back to the truck. Snow crunched beneath their boots and paws. The wind cut through Rowan's coat, but his mind felt sharper than the cold. On their way back toward town, Rowan made an unexpected turn. "Not back to the hospital?" he asked himself quietly. Ridge glanced up at him, ears twitching. "No," Rowan murmured. "We need to see the church." The truck climbed the hill leading to St. Gabriel's. Dark clouds hung heavy above the steeple. Lights glowed softly through the stained glass, casting gentle reds and blues across the snow-covered yard. And then Rowan saw it. Across the field, perched high on the opposite ridge, sat a black SUV. Large, heavy, idling, its headlights off, but its silhouette unmistakable. Ridge saw it too. His growl began low, almost inaudible, then grew sharper, more focused. Someone was inside, watching. The SUV's engine shifted. Headlights flashed on. A beam of white light swept across the snow like a slow-moving blade, and illuminated a man standing just outside the vehicle. Tall, broad-shouldered, face obscured by the storm. But Rowan saw the hands clearly. Black gloves, thick leather, the same kind used by tactical operators when they wanted no fingerprints, no burns, no trace. The man raised his chin slightly, staring straight down the hill. Straight toward Rowan, toward Ridge, toward the church where Jonah and Ellie slept under police watch. The wind roared, but Rowan felt no cold, only recognition. A dark clarity, a threat made visible. Ridge stepped in front of Rowan, barking fiercely, muscle and instinct in full alert. The SUV door slammed. The man climbed inside. The engine revved, and the vehicle disappeared into the curtain of snow, swallowed by the storm before Rowan could read the plates. Rowan stood motionless, the world shrinking to Ridge's rhythmic growls and the fading echo of the SUV. The black-gloved man was real, and he was watching the church, watching the children, watching them. The chapter ended on that stare, the one Rowan could feel even after the man vanished. A stare that promised everything was only beginning. The next morning broke with a thin sunlight pushing through the storm clouds, revealing a town still wrapped in snow, but no longer suffocated by it. The Carter property, though burned and broken, had become a gathering spot. Neighbors in thick jackets, old farmers with weathered faces, and even teenagers from the church youth group trudged through the snow, carrying hammers, wooden planks, and boxes of donated supplies. It was the way small towns responded to tragedy, with their hands, their time, and their stubborn refusal to let darkness have the final word. Rowan Maddox arrived early, Ridge running ahead through the fresh powder, his paws kicking up glittering dust. Ridge's sable coat shimmered under the pale light, his bright broken arrow chest patch standing out like a symbol of defiance. Whenever someone unfamiliar approached, Ridge sniffed gently before allowing them near, protective but not hostile. A guardian learning new names and faces. Jonah and Ellie sat wrapped in blankets atop a small hill overlooking their ruined home. Ellie's golden brown curls peeked out beneath a wool cap, her cheeks pink from the cold. Jonah wore a heavier coat donated by the sheriff's department, his green eyes watching every action with the seriousness of someone much older. Rowan joined the volunteers, lifting beams, hammering boards, clearing debris. His breath steamed as he worked, but something inside him felt warm, warmer than he'd felt in years. Responsibility, purpose, a rhythm that reminded him of building sandbag walls in Afghanistan, except this time the mission wasn't survival. It was repair, healing. He felt eyes on him. Jonah stood at the bottom of the steps, hands shoved in his pockets. "You don't have to help every day," the boy said, his voice soft, almost shy. Rowan straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "I know. Then why do you?" Rowan looked toward Ellie, who was sitting beside Ridge, giggling softly as the German shepherd nudged her hand with his nose. Ridge lay curled around the girl like a living shield, one ear turned outward to monitor the world, the other flicking every time she whispered to him. Ellie looked calmer today, less haunted, and Ridge's presence clearly eased her trembling. "I help," Rowan said slowly, "because it feels like the right thing to do." Jonah watched him carefully. You look like someone who knows how to fix things. A house, a person. He paused. A family. The words hit Rowan harder than he expected. He had spent years believing he didn't deserve the word family near his name. But Jonah said it without hesitation, as if it was simply true. Jonah looked down again. Ellie thinks Ridge is, well, not normal. Across the yard, Ellie tightened her mittens, then leaned into Ridge's thick fur. Ridge isn't from the ground, she called out suddenly. Ridge comes from God. Ridge's ears perked at the sound of his name. He nuzzled Ellie, gently, then placed a paw over her leg, as though claiming her safety as his own. Rowan couldn't help but soften. He's just a dog, he murmured. Ellie shook her head so hard her cap nearly fell off. No, he hears things people don't, feels things before they happen. Jonah nodded. She's right. That night at the church, when the bell rang, Ridge knew before anyone else. Rowan's jaw tightened slightly. He couldn't explain that moment any more than the children could. And then, mid-morning, Jonah approached him, holding something wrapped carefully in a cloth. Rowan, Jonah said, voice trembling. I found something. Rowan took the cloth and unwrapped it slowly. Inside lay a piece of paper, scorched around the edges, but legible in the middle. A letter, handwritten in a firm but slightly rushed script. It's from my dad, Jonah whispered. I found it in the ash behind the house. Rowan's heart knocked against his ribs. The letter was addressed simply, to whoever finds this before my kids do. He read the first line silently. If something bad happens, bring the children to the church. Rowan swallowed. Jonah, there's more, Jonah urged. Rowan kept reading. There is someone there who owes me. Someone who made a promise. And he will know what to do. A chill moved through Rowan's spine, not from the cold, but from the words. Someone who owes me. Someone who made a promise. Rowan's eyes lifted to Jonah. Your father, what else did he tell you? Anything about this? Jonah shook his head. No. But he said once, there are good men hiding in plain sight. Men who don't know they're needed until God pushes them. I didn't know what he meant. He hesitated. Until now. Rowan inhaled sharply, but before he could respond, Ridge stopped moving. The dog froze in place, muscles going iron tight. His eyes narrowed at the tree line behind the burned foundation. His tail lowered, hackles rising. A quiet, dangerous growl began in his chest. Ridge? Rowan murmured. Jonah turned, panic flickering in his eyes. Is someone there? At first, Rowan saw nothing, only snow drifting across broken beams. Then Ridge barked sharply once, a warning. Ellie grabbed Rowan's coat. Ridge hears her again. Her? Rowan whispered. The woman, Ellie said. The one I saw in the church, the one who told me to run. Rowan felt his heartbeat stutter. Ellie, what do you mean, hears her? Ellie pointed toward the ruined doorway. She's standing where the kitchen used to be, right there. Rowan looked, but saw nothing except ash and snow. Ridge suddenly moved forward, slow and deliberate, head bowed, but eyes locked on the empty doorway. He didn't bark, he didn't growl, he lowered himself, like he recognized someone gentle, someone familiar. And for the first time, Rowan felt something impossible. The air changed, softened, as if another presence walked through the ruins unseen. Ridge's tail gave one small, hesitant wag. Ellie smiled through tears. See? She likes Ridge. Rowan stared at the empty space, throat tight. He wanted to believe it was wind, or memory, or Ellie's imagination. But Ridge, trained in warfare, unshakable in chaos, grounded in instinct, was reacting to something Rowan could not explain. The feeling passed as quickly as it came. Ridge blinked and looked around, confused, like waking from a dream. Volunteers continued their work, unaware of what had just happened. Rowan tucked the letter carefully into his coat. Jonah lingered beside him. "Rowan," he whispered, "who owed my father a promise?" Rowan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the church steeple rising in the distance. Father Michael had reacted strangely when Rowan mentioned Anna, the woman Ellie claimed to have seen. The priest's hesitation, his lapsed composure, his whispered fear. Rowan turned the letter over and read the last line, the one cut off in the fire. "The man who owes me is..." The rest was blackened, completely burned. Not a trace of ink left. Rowan stared at the ruined words, mind racing. There were only 3 men who could have held that kind of promise: himself, the sheriff, or Father Michael. But the way the priest had reacted in the church. Ridge nudged Rowan's hand, sensing his tension. "Rowan?" Jonah repeated. "Is the man who owes my dad you?" Rowan didn't breathe. Jonah's eyes, green and searching, held the question like a weight too heavy for a child. Ellie looked up at him too, fingers curling into Ridge's fur. The wind shifted. The unfinished line on the letter fluttered. And Rowan felt the truth pressing closer. Not yet clear, but coming for him with the weight of destiny. "I don't know," Rowan said quietly, "but I'm going to find out." The chapter ended on the burned edge of the letter. The sentence that refused to reveal the name. Snow melted into soft slush along the edges of Silver Hollow's main road, signaling the storm finally weakening after days of relentless white. Patrol cars lined the outside of the sheriff's building, their lights rotating slowly in the gray morning. Rowan Maddox stepped inside with Ridge at his heel, the dog's coat damp from the walk and his amber eyes sharper than ever, as if he sensed that today held an answer none of them were prepared for. Inside the small interrogations room sat the man who had stalked the church, torched the Carter home, and stood by the black SUV in the storm. He was in his mid-40s, tall but slouched, wearing a gray prison jumpsuit now instead of the heavy coat from before. His brown hair was greasy, matted to his scalp, and a thin scar ran down his left cheek, a reminder of a life shaped by violence. His hands fidgeted constantly, fingers trembling, nails bitten down to the quick. Detective Halvor stood by the table with Sheriff Elena Brooke, arms crossed over his thick torso. He looked even more severe today, eyes narrowed, blonde beard more unkempt, shoulders tense under his dark green winter jacket. Ridge paced a slow circle around Rowan, then stopped, muscles coiled, growl low. "He knows," Halvor muttered. "Dog's been reacting to him since we dragged him in." The man, Earl Gibbons, gulped hard, eyes darting to Ridge, then to Rowan. "Keep that thing away from me." Rowan didn't flinch. "He remembers you," Rowan said quietly. "From the fire." Gibbons swallowed. "I was just supposed to watch the house, not the kids. I didn't know they were inside." "You killed their parents before the fire," Sheriff Brooks said bluntly. The man flinched. "That wasn't me. I swear. I just lit the accelerant after I got the call." Halvor slammed a heavy hand on the table. "Then who killed Daniel and Lily Carter?" Earl shuddered so violently the chair rattled. His fingers curled into fists. "I can't say. He'll find me. He'll bury me. He knows everything that goes on near that church." "Who is he?" Rowan asked. Earl looked at Rowan with a hollow gaze that came from witnessing too much. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." Earl's lips quivered. He's someone who knows the church inside out. Rooms no one uses anymore. Secrets no one talks about. He was there that night. I saw him watching the house burn. Something cold crept through Rowan's spine. You're lying. No, Earl whispered. Because he knows you too. Said you'd show up. Said everything would happen just like before. Rowan froze, breath knocked out of him. Before what? Sheriff Brooke asked sharply. But Earl only wrapped his arms around himself, shivering. I'm dead if I say his name. Ridge barked once, loud and explosive, rattling the window. Earl jumped, knocking his chair backward. Ridge lunged forward instinctively. Rowan grabbed the harness, just in time. The dog continued growling at Earl's boots, teeth bared, exactly the same warning stance he gave in war zones before identifying a hostile target. Halvor leaned forward. He's your problem now, Maddox. He reacts to you because you're tied to this. Rowan didn't answer, because the truth was creeping in like fog. He was tied to this, more than he understood, more than he remembered. Volunteers were gathered outside the rebuilt Carter home later that afternoon. The walls were up, the roof secure, windows newly installed. Children from the church carried small wreaths. Elderly women arranged quilts inside. The small town breathed again. The dedication ceremony was simple. Neighbors clapped mittens together. Ellie ran to Ridge and wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in the thick fur. The German shepherd lay down beside her, letting her lean into him, one paw gently resting across her shin. Rowan stood at the edge of the crowd, uneasy but present. Father Michael stepped forward. His black cassock moved gently in the breeze, his gray hair brushed back neatly. His aging face, normally kind, looked unusually solemn. He raised a hand for quiet. There are moments in life, he began, voice low but firm, when tragedy leaves us asking why. Why does God allow suffering? Why does he stay silent when innocent people beg for help? The crowd fell still. Father Michael continued. But sometimes, the answer is not silence. Sometimes God answers through the hands of a soldier who believes he has nothing left to give. Rowan looked down at his boots, throat tightening. A soldier who believes he is broken? The priest said, eyes landing on Rowan. But God sees what the soldier cannot, that he still has a family left to save. Rowan swallowed hard, heat rising in his chest. Ridge nudged his hand, sensing the emotion. Ellie stepped forward suddenly, mittens dangling. Her voice was small but clear. You didn't just walk by our house, she told Rowan. God called you there. Rowan's vision blurred for a moment. He knelt instinctively and Ellie wrapped her arms around his neck. You came, she whispered. Just like the lady said you would. The lady? Rowan asked softly. At the church? Ellie nodded. The one who told me to run. She said you'd find us. Father Michael's expression tightened, but he said nothing. That night, long after the crowd had gone home, and the candles around the rebuilt house flickered low, Rowan walked alone through the quiet church. Ridge padded beside him, tail lowered but calm. Snow tapped lightly on the stained glass windows, casting muted blues and purples across the pews. The church felt alive tonight, not haunted, just watchful. Rowan's mind kept circling the same questions. Who owed Daniel Carter a promise? Why did Earl Gibbons say the man knew Rowan? Why did Ellie claim the woman in the church told her Rowan would come? As he passed the sacristy, something tugged at him. A memory he didn't have. An instinct he didn't understand. Ridge's nose twitched. He walked ahead, pushing gently at the wooden storage cabinet against the wall. His paw scratched once at the door. Something in there, Rowan whispered. Ridge sat down, staring at the cabinet. Rowan opened it. Inside lay stacks of old hymnals and dusty candles, and an old wooden box, untouched for years, locked once, but the clasp now broken. Rowan lifted it out, placed it on the pew, and opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph, yellowed with age. Rowan's heart slammed hard enough to hurt. In the picture stood 3 people. Father Michael, younger, smiling. A young man Rowan didn't recognize at first. Dark hair, strong jaw, familiar eyes. And Rowan Maddox himself, in full Marine dress uniform. He staggered backward. "No, I've never." Ridge whined softly, pressing against him. Rowan's gaze snapped back to the photo. The young man beside Father Michael, the one with the faint scar near his eyebrow, the one Rowan now realized looked hauntingly like Jonah. That man was Daniel Carter. Jonah and Ellie's father. Rowan whispered, "No. Why would I? How would I?" He didn't remember this photo. Not the day. Not the moment. Not Daniel. And yet there they were, standing together like brothers. The truth hit him in a cold wave. Daniel Carter knew Rowan, knew him well, knew him before Rowan lost parts of his memory after the blast overseas. Daniel wasn't warning his kids randomly. He had written that letter because Rowan owed him something, because a promise had been made, a promise Rowan could not remember. Rowan felt Ridge press harder against his leg, sensing the shift inside him. Behind him, footsteps sounded, soft, measured. Father Michael stood in the doorway, eyes shadowed, expression unreadable. "Rowan," the priest whispered. "You weren't supposed to find that yet." Rowan held up the photograph. His voice was barely steady. "What do I owe Daniel Carter?" he asked. And how did he know I would save his children? The chapter ended there. On Rowan's trembling question, the photograph that rewrote everything, and the truth that waited in the shadows. Sometimes a miracle doesn't arrive as fire from the sky or a voice from the clouds. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a man who thinks he has nothing left to give, or a child brave enough to hope one more time. And sometimes God answers through the loyal steps of a dog who refuses to walk away. In our lives, we often wait for signs, for proof, for something undeniable. But more often than we realize, God works in the everyday. A stranger who shows kindness, a friend who stands beside us, a small moment of courage when we feel weakest. Those are miracles too. The kind that keep us moving, keep us believing, keep us alive. If this story touched you, share it with someone who might need a reminder that hope is never lost. Leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts. And subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge to follow more stories of faith, courage, and the quiet miracles God still sends into this world. May God watch over you and bless you wherever you are, and may you never forget, there is always light waiting for those who walk through the dark.